a social system. It's usually under social sciences that looks at how we turn natural resources into products and services. When we talk about economics, we generally talk about the desire for economic growth. So we have natural resources being turned into products and services. In many cases, when we look at classical models, a couple of things come to mind. That we can have infinite growth and that growth is always good. So it could even be at the cost of the environment. Let's change that to desirable. If you think about some examples of natural disasters, like, for example, oil spills, when you think about that, you think, well, from an economic point of view, it might actually be a good thing because we have to produce supplies to clean up the oil spill. And then we also have people helping and doing the work of cleaning up the oil spill. But from an environmental perspective, an oil spill is devastating to the ecosystem and will ultimately cause a decrease in the resources available for our economy. So it also, these classical models do not take into consideration damage to ecosystems. And that resources are actually finite. Rather than being infinite, so finite. And this is important to this idea because remember we talked about environmental services. Oftentimes we get what is called a market failure, where the economic model does not take into consideration that if we log the rainforest, or if we overfish the coral reefs or the oceans, that ultimately there's going to be some costs associated with that. And one big one has to do with climate change. And so as we see more and more devastating storms, we realize that burning fossil fuels, even though it powered our economic growth, and there still might be a lot of fossil fuels left to be burnt, it doesn't take into consideration the fact that now we have this really costly climate change to clean up after. And when we talk about economics, that is one of the ideas of market failure. So let's look at a diagram or an image that shows this relationship between economics and the environment. So natural resources are seen as inputs, and then we convert those inputs into products, goods, and services. And then we have a demand for those products, and we have this complex system. And some people believe that if the economy stops growing, then that is always a really bad thing. But what we need to realize is that we might need to reach a dynamic equilibrium in growth so that we have more of a steady state production, and that growth is not sustainable if we think it's going to be able to continue for forever. And so that underlines most of our economic models. So we have a whole new way that we need to think about our economy and our environment.